Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to the second of the Merge Weekly Workshops with Infura. Thank you all for joining us for this session, which we are calling the Solo Stakers Forum, What You Need to Do to Get Ready. I'm Tom Hay, a Senior Product Manager at Infura, and I'll be hosting today's session. Once again, we have a packed agenda for you. So we are going to be spending time together talking to you about both the context of why you need to get ready for the merge as a solo staker, and then getting into some more details while still keeping it at largely a high level of what you need to do to get ready. We're going to leave ample time for Q&A, so we'll do our best to get through this agenda with some pace so we leave time to answer your questions. Our goal for this session is to give solo stakers guidance on what they need to do to get ready for the merge and provide them with those high-level examples of how to prepare. Along with our Q&A, we have a great team here to guide you through this today. So I want to introduce to you my colleagues, Darina, Gagan, and Tyreek. All of us are part of a larger team working on the merge for Infura and for Consensus. You're going to see Darina popping up in the chat, providing helpful resources, but you'll see all of us in the chat answering your questions. And also today, we have a subject matter expert, the co-founder of Infura, Michael Wheeler, who's joining to talk to us about his staker setup and to provide an example via his journey about being prepared for the merge. So we're really excited to have Michael with us today. A bit of housekeeping before we jump in any further. Please go ahead and help us out by clicking the green button that you see on this crowdcast and filling out the community survey. We are going to use the data in order to continually further refine and improve these sessions to meet your needs. We have already used the data from last week's session to go ahead and make some changes to our scheduling and to add in some additional topics. So we really appreciate that feedback, and it's actually helped us to make sure that we're tailoring the content to your needs. I also want to let you know you can go ahead and use the Ask a Question button to ask a question. We're going to do our best to answer as many questions as possible that are relevant to the merge. So if a question is not relevant to the merge, you can always join us at our monthly Infura community calls. In fact, they are the last Tuesday of each month. There is one next week, next Tuesday, right before our next merge weekly session. So that Infura community call will be at 3 p.m. Universal Coordinated Time, which is 11 a.m. Eastern Time and 8 a.m. Pacific Time. That will also be on Crowdcast. So if you want to attend next week's Merge Weekly session, join the Infura community call an hour early, see that one, and then you can come right over into our session on the Merge Weekly. This call is being recorded, and it can be replayed again here on Crowdcast at any time. And we actually have our first session also up here on Crowdcast if you want to rewatch that. And we're going to aim to share both the recording of this call and the deck to the Consensus Merge knowledge base before the end of the week, as well as email out these resources to our users. All right, enough of that. Now that we covered that, let's go into the background for today. So last week, we really talked about the overall timeline of Ethereum and how proof of stake was always part of this journey. But since today we're focused on solo stakers, we're going to hone in on some key dates related to staking, specifically as it relates to the beacon chain and this journey that we've been on to merging, going from proof of work to proof of stake. So a first key date I want to call out is October 14th, 2020. And that is the deployment of the staking deposit contract. It was when those who were interested in staking 32 ETH to become a staking validator had the opportunity to actually stake that ETH to the staking deposit contract. On December 1st, 2020, that's when the beacon chain actually launched. And those individuals who had staked were now able to participate in running the beacon chain. And so if some folks staked ahead of the beacon chain launch, some waited to the launch to stake, but that beacon chain is currently running in parallel with Ethereum, the proof of work version of Ethereum that is running today. I want to also call out the first fork of the beacon chain. That was the Altair fork. And Altair was a fork that was the first major network upgrade that had an exact rollout time. We talked last week about this idea of a slot. A slot is when a staking validator will propose their block to the blockchain under proof of stake. And under the Altair fork, to actually quote from the Ethereum Foundation website, every upgrade prior to Ethereum had been based on a declared block number on the proof of work chain, where block times vary. However, the beacon chain does not require solving for proof of work and instead works on a time-based epoch system consisting of 32 12-second slots of time where validators can propose blocks. This is why we knew exactly when we would hit epoch 74,240 and Altair became alive. So this gives you a sense, as you know, last week we talked about all those forks, and we're about to see that with our timeline, the sort of change as we're moving to proof of stake. Also want to call out, we've had the Ropsten merge, we've had the Sepolia merge, and we're coming up on the Gurley merge. Gurley merge is coming up. So looking at our current timeline, we're in this dotted box here on the far right, or if this is mirrored, it might be the far left of my screen, but this dotted box. And the Gurley merge is upcoming in early mid-August, depending on how you define early mid. And once there's an announcement blog from the Ethereum Foundation with the total terminal difficulty of that, we're going to share that out with you. But I bring this up because the Gurley merge could be a time to test out your staking setup. If you're currently staking or if you're interested in staking, to be better prepared for the Ethereum mainnet merge. So let's talk about testnets and testing the merge. This slide may look familiar to you if you were here last week, but like I said, at this point, as an Ethereum community, we have successfully merged the Ropsten testnet, which happened on June 8th, and the Sepolia testnet, which happened on July 26th. Additionally, many shadow forks have been occurring in order to test various client configurations in anticipation of the merge. We'll show you those, what the execution layer clients and consensus layer clients are in a slide later on, but it's important for us, you know, as we have client diversity with a lot of different client pairings that can be used, to test these out in advance of the Ethereum mainnet merge. So the shadow forks have given an opportunity to do that. And so now we have one more testnet to merge, which is Gurley. And one, like I said, once we have the exact details, which is typically shared via an Ethereum Foundation blog, we'll share those out with everyone. And if everything proceeds as planned, after the Gurley merge occurs, and there is some work done to sort of debrief it, we will then be able to, sort of proceed ahead and set the total terminal difficulty for the Ethereum mainnet merge. So after the Gurley merge, we'll have really hone in on a sense of when the Ethereum mainnet merge will occur. Just want to bring up, you know, with the Gurley merge, if you are a validator, a staking validator, if you want to be a staking validator, here is an opportunity to test your setup. So after the merge occurs, Gurley and Sepolia will be the supported testnets. You'll have access to the API endpoints for both On and Fura. Ropsten, Rinkeby, and Kovan are going to be deprecated after the merge. The Ethereum Foundation has announced deprecation timelines, and we are going to give all users at minimum 2 weeks notice before deprecating these from Infura. But post-merge, there will be deprecation of those test nets, and Gurley and Sepolia will be the test nets. Just a note, Piermont has also been deprecated. It's going to be removed from the Infura UI.
Hey, Tom, I don't know if it's just me, but your screen has gone blank for me.
Oh, no. Hopefully we are seeing testnets in the merge. Testnets and testing the merge. Can I get a confirm? Okay, great. We still seeing it?
It must be my iPad. So keep going.
No worries, no worries. Thank you, Michael Willer, for paying attention. Though that is always good to make sure that everyone can see this. And if anyone else having trouble, throw it in the chat. Let us know. But like I said, we will share out this recording and the deck afterwards. So if there's anything anyone can't see, not to worry. We'll capture it in the recording and we'll have this information. Okay, great. So now let's talk about what you need to do to get ready. So love this drawing from Danny Ryan of the Ethereum Foundation of the post-merge client architecture, because what it shows is that once the merge occurs, the Ethereum client itself is going to look a bit different than it does today. An Ethereum client is not going to is not going to just be the proof of work client that we have today. It's actually going to be a combination of clients. So it will now consist of a beacon node driving an execution engine. The beacon node is also, we'll sometimes call that the consensus layer. In the execution engine, we'll sometimes call that the execution layer. So you'll kind of hear those terms be thrown around. So that beacon node, that consensus layer, is driving the execution engine, aka the execution layer. And the execution layer is what we would consider Ethereum today. So that node is then driving, that the beacon node is driving the execution layer to propose a valid block when it is their turn, when it is their slot. So that will gather transactions from the memory pool, from the mempool, put them together in a block and propose it. So like I said, the execution engine, also referred to as the execution layer, is like a current proof of work Ethereum client, like Geth or Besu. So staking node validators, so those who have staked 32 ETH and are participating in proposing blocks, they will have to run both in order to be online at the merge. So they have 3 key action items. So you're gonna hear us repeat this a lot of times over the next 6 weeks. Their 3 key action items are the following. Action item 1, run both a consensus layer client, aka the beacon node, and an execution layer client, aka the execution engine. They have to do that. They have to run both. They need to authenticate both the execution layer and the consensus layer clients with a shared JSON web token secret, JWT secret, so they can securely communicate. And then finally, they need to set a fee recipient address to receive their earned transaction fee tips and any maximal extractable value, which is also known as MEV. So if you don't complete the first 2 steps, the first 2 action items, it will result in your node being seen as offline after the merge until both layers are synced and authenticated. So in order to be online, you have to complete those 2 action items of running both a consensus layer client and an execution layer client, and authenticating both the execution layer and the consensus layer clients with the shared JSON web token secret. Not doing the third step, not setting a fee recipient address, means that you would still have your validator be able to behave as usual, but you'd miss out on those unburnt fee tips and any MEV that you would have otherwise earned in the blocks your validator proposes. So you want to do all 3 if you're a staking validator to get the benefits of being a staking validator. And then just to sort of go into the post-merge APIs, anyone running a staking validator will have access to 3 APIs. the execution layer API, which is also known as, that's the JSON RPC API, the JavaScript Object Notation Remote Procedure Call API, or the Ethereum API as we would know it today. Then there's the Beacon Chain API, that API that is for the consensus layer. And then there's a new API called the Engine API, which we saw in this previous slide. We saw that's where the Beacon node, the consensus layer, is driving the execution layer. So given that, a couple things about these post-merge APIs. The execution layer API, it's going to continue to largely operate as it does today, but there are going to be certain changes to block structure because we're merging together the existing proof of work version of Ethereum and with the Beacon chain and making proof of stake Ethereum. So there's going to be changes to the block structure. We will get into that more in our final week on August 16th, but we'll also touch it again on August 2nd when we go in depth on the execution layer and consensus layer. There's a change in slot and block timing. We're at approximately 13 seconds a block being produced today, and that will move to 12 seconds a block, so it'll be slightly faster. There's going to be some opcode changes that go along with the changing block structure. And if you're using certain on-chain sources of randomness, a certain opcode, there will be changes to that. So we'll go into that on August 16th. And then finally, there's some changes to parameters in that JSON RPC API spec. So like there's certain, we'll go into this in more depth in a later session, but what we would consider, a parameter of like latest block, the naming of that will change. And what that means changes a bit with proof of stake. So if you want to learn more about that, August 16th, we have a specific workshop for dApp developers and smart contract developers of things that they should be aware of as we go into the merge. So consensus layer, that API will also largely continue to operate as it does today. But now it's going to be driving the execution layer to produce a block when it's that validator slot to do so. So when that slot comes up, it will be driving the execution layer to produce a block, and it'll be doing that via the Engine API. Now, the Engine API in the protocol is designed to be in a one-to-one relationship between the consensus layer and the execution layer. And this is why staking validators will have to run both the execution layer and consensus layer clients in order to be online at the time of the merge. So this is really, really important. We are going to go into the technical details of all of that on our in-depth workshop on August 2nd called the execution layer and the consensus layer. But it's really important for you to be aware of that. If you are a staking validator, you've staked that 32 ETH, you have to run the EL and the CL, the execution layer and the consensus layer. So let's talk about the execution layer and consensus layer clients. Here's just a list of some of the execution and consensus layer clients that you can use as part of your staking setup. I also sometimes call it the staking stack. Love those alliterative terms, staking setup, staking stack. I guess staking stack is the alliterative one. I have specifically highlighted Besu and Teku because on August 2nd, we're going to be talking about those in depth, but you can see the other clients that we have here. And calling it back to an earlier slide when we were talking about shadow forks, the point of the shadow forks is to test all these various setups because there's different, pardon me for those who are strong, who are math majors, but the different combinations or permutations, I think it's permutations of the clients together to make sure that they're working correctly going into the merge. So that's what the shadow forks are for. So here you can see a selection, and Doreen is going to share out some sources about those clients and some information from the Ethereum Foundation about client diversity. So now, instead of, this has been very high level, very, let's get into a user's journey. And I am really delighted to be joined today by Michael Wheeler, who's co-founder of Infura, a great colleague, and he's agreed to come on and actually share with us his journey. So we're going to just pause here and have a brief Q&A with Michael. Michael, how are you doing? It's good.
I'm doing
good to have you on here. I know you had a presentation.
I'm escaping. I'm in Paris. It's 105 degrees or 40 degrees, and I'm just happy to be in my hotel room right now.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I know you presented on Infura earlier today, so you're pulling double duty. We really appreciate it. So I guess my first question is, as a solo staker, what have you been doing to prepare yourself for the merge?
Yeah, so I started staking, you put up the dates before, December 1st, 2020. I was in that Genesis block very early on. I wanted to contribute to the success of ETH2 and the success of that network getting launched. It's been overwhelmingly supported, over 400,000 stakers on that network. It's amazing how much contribution is there. When I initially launched my infrastructure, I went with Prism. I met Preston when I was doing the meetups in New York, and I was just a really big fan of the Prismatic Labs team. Didn't know that Prism was going to turn into a super majority client, and it was one of those things but I never got around to leaving Prism. I was really comfortable with the software. I really liked how easy it is to run, how it basically upgrades itself. It keeps itself upgraded. All you have to do is restart it. So I started staking on my home, little Mac Mini on my desk. And then pretty shortly after, I was moving. And all of a sudden I was like, well, this is challenging. So I, at that point, migrated my beacon and my validator to a public cloud with the idea that, all right, once I get settled, I will bring it back to my home computer, get it off of AWS, I also opted, I think like so many people, opted to use Infura for my ETH1 API connection for my staking. If you've tried to run a full Geth node or one of the other clients, it's challenging, and I guess I just wasn't up for the challenge at the time. But the good thing is when plans for how this merge is going to happen started to kind of take shape, and I love the fact that it's effectively forcing people to get rid of their Infura crutch for this execution layer. It's going to go a long ways to adding robustness and more kind of diversity into the network, stability into the network. So and Tom, you can cut me off if I'm just rambling, but so what I've done is I'm in a spot now where I can really stake for the long term, which is what I'm planning to do. So I invested in some hardware dedicated specifically just for this task. And once I got all that hardware in place, I used Go Ethereum client, which again, I'm most familiar with that one. Once I got that one synced up and stable and running for quite some time, what I did is I took my existing, I have a VPN to my public cloud to my home network, and I pointed my validator and my beacon node, or my beacon node, I pointed to my Geth version that's running on my home computer. Made sure that was working, and that worked fine for a little while. Then I moved the beacon node into my home network, pointed the validator at that new version of the beacon node. And then lastly, what I've most recently done is then I went through the process of moving the validator. And that's a little more challenging because there's some extra steps you need to be careful about when you do that, so that you make sure that you don't lose your slashing protection. Just avoid a little bit of risk of being having a slashing event against your validator if you move it from one computer to another. So I've gone through all that, and now I'm in a really great state where all of my infrastructure is in my home, and running very smoothly.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing that journey in those details. Just to kind of call back on something you mentioned, your execution layer client, you're using Geth, your consensus layer client, you're using Prism, and it seems like would it be fair to say your advice is like for those who are staking, like use the clients that they're most comfortable with, just given given what's going on, like being comfortable and having familiarity with those clients gives you sort of that peace of mind.
Yeah, I mean, definitely working with something you're comfortable with makes it less stressful for me anyway. That being said, when a few months ago when the Prism supermajority was out there and everyone was saying like, okay, everyone like stop using Prism, pick up one of these other great clients and use it. I take that as an opportunity to at least go explore those clients, download them, get familiar with them, be in a position where you can feel comfortable making a switch if you need to at some point if there's an issue with a particular client. I mean, we did see that with the Ethereum network early on. There was Geth had its issues at one point, Parity had its issues at one point. So I just feel like having the comfort level working with multiple client versions, it just makes you sleep a little better at night, probably as a solo staker.
Yeah, we are definitely big proponents of client diversity. As I previously mentioned on our August 2nd call, we're going to go into technical details of running the EL and the CL, kind of exactly the journey that you are talking about. And we're going to do it with Besu and Teku, just given my and some of the other subject matter experts we'll have on that call familiarity with those two. So that would be another sort of, creating those combinations, permutations, so that if there is a bug in any client, that the network stays secured and stays online. Great. So, going through this process, I'm sure there's some resources that you found really useful to prepare. Those might have been people in your network. You kind of alluded to that. But just generally, what resources did you find really helpful in this journey from being part of that Genesis block of becoming a staking validator to up to today?
Yeah, I mean, the documents that Prismatic Labs puts out are amazing. They're incredible. So that's probably been the number one resource that I've used. I'm in their Discord channels, so I'm not super active, but make it a point to get in there once in a while, check their announcement channel if there's a kind of an urgent upgrade that's needed. Which for Prism, all you do is you restart the process and it'll just upgrade itself. Frankly, the Ethereum launchpad from the foundation is amazing. It's so good. It's so easy to just walk through their checklist to get a validator going, and they hold your hand the whole time, which makes it helpful. So I guess I would say that, yeah, the docs for Prism. Of course, I have long background running Geth, so I not as in need of docs for running Geth, but yeah, read the docs.
Read the docs. Always read the docs. That is great advice. And to that point, we're going to share out some of those resources in the chat. But just to regardless of what it seems, execution consensus layer combo you choose, each of the different client teams have different ways of communicating. So whether that's Discord whether that's through GitHub. It's just important that when you make those selections for those on the call, like make sure you know those channels of communication so you can stay up to date. That's really, really important. And so we'll be going over what those channels are for Besu and Teku on August 2nd. But like I said, client diversity, other setups are great, but just make sure you know how those client teams are communicating out so you can stay up to date, have the latest update to your client software. Cool. So final question for you. Any final advice you want to give solo stakers preparing for the merge?
Yeah, so I think I came from like an IT background, and then like you kind of have this mentality of like 100% uptime, like it has to be up all the time. And I think one of the things that I learned with this is just be okay if your validator's down a little bit. Like it's not the end of the world if you need, like it's much better to be slow and methodical when you're working with the software than to like have it stuck in your head that you can't miss a single attestation. Especially if you're moving, like migrating from one server to another. If you're migrating the validator, just be methodical, take your time, and do that. And the only other thing I would say, I guess, is like think through, things when things are fine, everything is normal and works. Like you have power at your house and you have your internet connection at home and everything's working. But think through like what if the power's out for 3 days? It might be okay. You might just say, okay, I'm just going to miss my attestations for 3 days, and that's fine. But if you want to think through possibly a kind of a backup plan for that, for me, what I've done on a separate spare computer I actually have a running Geth node that's just synced and running, just in case the one that I'm using gets corrupted or dead or something, so that I don't have to wait 2 or 3 days to point at another Geth node, because that's really the long one. And actually, the beacon node has gotten pretty long to sync. I think it takes almost a day now. So think ahead as these chains have gotten, especially Geth, but even the beacon chain, as these have gotten bigger. In a disaster recovery kind of scenario, what would you do? And not doing anything is okay. Like you can just say, that's fine, I'll wait till my internet's back.
That is great advice. And I will throw in one more piece of advice, is set the fee recipient address, because those fee tips, that MEV is available right away. It's not locked up. So do that. And if that's something where it's a great opportunity to get those funds, and you no matter how you want to use them, whether they're part of going to be part of your rewards, whether you want to use them to fund public goods in the space, doesn't matter. You gotta set the fee recipient address. It's important to do, even though your staking setup will totally work. If you don't do it, don't miss out on those unburnt fee tips. Cool. Well, Michael, thank you so much.
It's like winning a little lottery when you get that, right?
Exactly. Well, Michael,
I see a question in the chat that says, can Geth run on a separate machine post merge? Absolutely. Yeah, they can be split.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that journey. If you have another like 25 minutes or so, we'd love for you to stick around as when we move to the Q&A. But now we're just going to share, before we go to the Q&A, we're just going to share out some information about what's next in this series and some resources that were mentioned, and then we'll move into the Q&A. So we should have plenty of time for that. So first off, today was our second workshop, and the goal of today's workshop was to give you an overview of the steps that solo stakers need to take in order to get ready for the merge, and to introduce to you many of the concepts that we'll be exploring in later weeks. So big shout out to Michael Wheeler for sharing his journey. That was super useful information. Hopefully everyone, if you need to watch it again, this is being recorded. You can come watch that. I'll definitely be watching it again. Really appreciate the insight that you shared, Michael. Next week, we're going to do a workshop on maximal extractable value, and the considerations of that as we go into the merge. So kind of like where it is today and how does that change and shift as we go into the merge. My colleague Gagan will be running that workshop, and we'll be talking with a researcher and an engineer about MEV, giving you that overview of what it is today and what it looks like once we're merged. Then on August 2nd, we're going to have a technical workshop, once again aimed at solo stakers. We're going to go into deep detail on the execution client and the consensus client. Specifically, we're going to focus on Besu and Teku, how they work together in order to produce and validate blocks, and how to get that set up and running. I think this will be useful not only to those who are currently staking, but also those who are thinking about staking in the future. You can still stake. This was a question. We were on a Twitter space yesterday, and someone's like, can I still stake, or did I miss it? You can still stake. You can stake after the merge. You can participate in staking. So that will be content that you can continue to come back and review. On August 9th, we're going to cover what it takes to run multiple validators, multiple staking validators, and then also talk about the option of staking as a service. So my colleague Tyreek is going to be hosting that workshop, and we'll be joined by some subject matter experts on staking as a service. Finally, we're going to wrap up on August 16th with a call focused on dApp and smart contract developers and what they need to do to get ready for the merge. I alluded to that. We'll be joined by members of developer relations teams from Truffle, Infura, Consensus as well. So we are going to actually be going through a tutorial on that workshop as well, sharing some tutorial resources. So now let's talk about resources about what we talked about today. So first off, just going to call it out. The Infura blog is a great place to stay plugged into what's going on. That post there is kind of the overview of everything we're doing as we prepare for the merge. I would also call out that at docs.infura.io, we have a new section that is up as of late last week called The Merge, where we're also reposting this information and where to find it. So check that out. It's in our documentation. There is the consensus knowledge base, the merge knowledge base. Information is there. And then we wanted to call out a resource to check out this recurring series. It's a series of blog posts called The State of Staking by the Codify Staking team. It's a great resource. Check it out. There's monthly updates about the state of staking, information, key facts. So it's great to go back and look at how that has changed over time and where we are today. Now, another thing that we have, for those who want to sort of see just another journey similar to what Michael shared today, Consensus Academy's director, Coogan Brennan, actually wrote a series called My Journey to Becoming a Validator on Ethereum 2.0. It's a blog post series of 4, and it talks about going from staking on the staking deposit contract, going live on December 1st, and then he also talks about how to safely migrate your Ethereum 2.0, your beacon chain validator client. So it starts back in 2022. I think the first blog post is from November of 2022, before the launch of the beacon chain, and walks through all the steps. There's a 5th part of this series that we'll talk about on August 2nd, which is about specifically preparing for the merge. So read up on this. This is like your pre-reading for that next session on August 2nd, if you are planning on attending. And then just 4 additional pieces of information. The Ethereum Foundation, Michael was referring to some of the resources the Ethereum Foundation has. This Solo Stake Your ETH guide actually links to many of those sources. So check this out. It's a really good one. They also have a knowledge base, a beacon chain knowledge base, which has a lot of really useful information. We will also mention again, just the Ethereum Foundation website on the merge is really useful, and the Mega Merge resource list that they have as well. It's just all the information that's been pulled together. So finally, help us out. We know, it's going to look this survey looks very similar to the last time because, we're trying to get as much information as possible. But if you fill this out, it really helps us craft some of this information. So we are like literally reading all the responses. It's a lot of information, but it's really helpful for us to sort of understand what questions you need answered, how prepared you feel, what do we need, what misconceptions there may be. So thank you. We appreciate you filling that out. And now we have 20 minutes left in this session. So we will move to the Q&A, and I am going to, to pop this open and just kind of start going through some of these questions. I think some of them were already answered. So I think the first one is, if community members, if you want to get help, I think these resources, attending this series is super important for that. Michael talked about sort of his journey towards like staking and getting ready for the merge. And I think all those resources are going to be really, really helpful as well. But I think, and then once again, I'd say participate in the Discord, of the client teams. Also, if you want to follow along the Ethereum R&D Discord, there's a link right from, I believe, the merge page where you can go in. You can actually see the work being done by folks who are working on the merge, the community. Any other ways that, as a community member, you can get involved? The colleagues, anything you want to talk about, that ways that you've gotten involved as a community member? I think then we covered it all. Okay, so question here: will the amount of greenhouse gases decrease after the merge? I think that's referring to the amount of like potential. Just to refine that question, because I think that's referring to potential creation of greenhouse gases by proof of work Ethereum mining, not like will greenhouse gases in overall society. The answer is that based off of math that has been done around sort of the change from proof of work to proof of stake, and Gagan already went and answered it, that Ethereum will use at least 99.95% less energy post-merge. So if all that energy were resulting in greenhouse gas emission, that would be sort of a proxy for the reduction. Gagan, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say there, or maybe share out the blog post that you shared.
Yeah, the blog post is up, inside the question section, and it's a blog on the Ethereum organization's website. The key thing to note here is that energy is produced in a variety of different ways, and the amount of greenhouse gases that energy results in depends upon what form of what created that energy. So solar has a smaller greenhouse gas footprint than coal, perhaps. So, but with Ethereum's proof of stake transition, in aggregate, it'll use a lot less energy. So in aggregate, it should really reduce a lot of the greenhouse gases that is currently being generated because of Ethereum mining. So all in all, it's good for the world.
Awesome. Next question: what is the big difference between this project, I'm assuming this series of things that we're doing, and others? Because I know ETH Staker, other groups are doing it. This is actually, a lot of the different groups that are part of the Ethereum community, whether it's the Ethereum Foundation, Ethereum Cat Herders, ourselves, ETH Staker, some of the client teams, we're doing sessions like these because we're trying to just make sure that folks are prepared and understand what the merge is. So actually there's a lot of overlap in these, and that's like purposeful. We're trying to collaborate and coordinate with other groups in order to give solo stakers, dApp developers, the end user, like as much information as they need about the merge, and really sort of dispel any myths, just help you out. So, there's a lot of, talking back and forth. You're seeing us showing resources for other projects as well. There's going to be a lot of that. So I would say we're kind of all under this big effort right now to have a successful merge. And this is like one aspect of it. And then specifically as Infura, we want to make sure that our Infura users are prepared and that any solo stakers are prepared and that they're going ahead and running. They need to now start running both the EL and the CL. That is, but so that they can be online at the merge. So I think that kind of covers it. This is a great question. When merge go live? Yes, we're waiting for this one. And Gagan, I think, gave a perfect answer. So Gagan, I don't know if you want to get into that answer real quick.
Yeah. So Tom, as you mentioned on the timeline slide, the Gurley merge is up. It's being planned for middle of August, early to mid August, and I think once that gets rolled out, then that's when we'll be able to determine when the merge will happen, because there are a couple of things after the Gurley merge which are really prerequisites for the final merge. So I know everybody wants a date, but we're getting closer to it. We are the next to last step with the Gurley merge, and then hopefully by we have a date for it towards the end of August, early September.
It's I think yeah, the biggest takeaway is just that after that Gurley merge, you'll start to see getting locked in like what the TTD will be, and also the necessary network upgrades to any clients that need to happen in order to be able to affect that merge. And this was a question last week, but when at that point in time, at that TTD, is that when the merge happens? Or are we merging after that? It's literally at that TTD. It's at that block, boom, merged, and then we're on proof of stake Ethereum. So it's really we will definitely be sharing out when it happens. There will be some watch parties that happen. We'll probably join in with all the different groups that are doing it, and so that will be a really it's kind of, I've been comparing, it's kind of like our moon landing, in a way. It'll be a big event. And so I think this one, don't they have a reason to continue their activities with the arrival of merge layer 2? I think it's just what is the state of layer 2s maybe going to be after the merge? And I think, layer 2 solutions are continuing to show themselves as being useful and necessary in this system as a way to give access points to lower fees and to users being able to have if they want access to rollups, high potentially transaction throughput volumes. There's a lot of reasons, and you're seeing the L2s, I think, do a good job of creating those sort of niches and purposes for themselves. And at Infura, we support APIs to many L2s, and our users love them and see a lot of use of them. So those will continue to exist. Just a note on some of the L2s, you will probably see some of the L2s are migrating their test nets. So certain side chains and L2s might be moving from say Kovan to Gurley, or from Rinkeby to Gurley. So that's a big thing to see. You'll sort of see that get updated. As I mentioned, there's deprecation timelines to deprecate Ropsten, Rinkeby, and Kovan. So thank you for this question. I think that's the change you're going to see with L2s, that they were using those sort of test nets. They didn't have their own test net. It's likely, they're going through that process right now. And I know some of those have those documents posted. So in the dApp developer workshop will actually share out all that information with you. And then the final one that I see, and I might have missed this, if I missed anything, let me know, but need merge urgently, but with the right amount of testing and everything. And I think that's what this process has done. So I'm feeling that, we are getting through, it's been exciting. We've had the Ropsten merge, the Sepolia merge. We're coming up on Gurley. That is going to be great. I think that is where we'll stop it for now. I don't see any other questions come in. So just kind of do a quick around the horn. If any of the colleagues want to add anything, I'll just start in the order. Darina, anything that you want to add before we jump?
Sure. Join us again next week, same time. We're going to be here to walk you through more stuff on the merch.
Thank you, Darina. Gagan, any final comments?
No, just thank you to the community for joining us, and appreciate the questions. Keep coming back. We'll keep adding interesting new content to keep you informed about the merge and to celebrate it when it finally goes live.
Thank you, Gagan. Tyreek.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you all for joining today. Definitely has been useful and a great turnout. Thank you for everybody for filling out the community survey. This is super useful for us. And also just kind of circling back to the question of what can the community do overall to help? Educating yourself first and foremost is a huge step forward, because there's a lot of misinformation that can be demystified by using all of the resources that we shared out. So the more that you know, the more conversations you can have as a person who's well informed, and also point those people to the right direction. So thank you again.
And finally, thank you, Tyreek. And then finally, our guest of honor, our subject matter expert, the man who always keeps his cool even when it's 105 degrees, when it's 40 plus Celsius, no matter where he is. Michael Wheeler, any last comments from you before we sign off?
No, it's been an honor to be here. Super excited and privileged to be in this community. And thanks, Tom. Thanks, Darina. Thanks, Gagan. Thanks, Tyreek. Thanks to all of you for joining as well. That's it.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone who joined today. Thank you to everyone on this call. And we will be recapping this call on Twitter Spaces on Friday at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. UTC. Just kind of going over what we talked about today in that format. Then we're back next week with a back-to-back Infura community call. And as Darina mentioned, Gagan will be hosting a session on Maximal Extractable Value, MEV. So be there, be here to watch the recordings. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your week. If you're at ETHCC, have a great ETHCC. Stay cool, drink lots of water, and be safe out there. Thank you all.
Thank you to the best host.